episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess, here back with another AFL review as we sit down to chat round 17. And joining me again, just like he did in the AFLW this last season from the Mongrel Punt, Mr. Alex Docherty. Alex, great to see you, sir. How's everything going?
It's great to see you too, Donnie. Yeah, no, things are really good. Things are really good over here. Yeah, keen to get stuck into what's been a big round. Hey, big week in football, as they say.
It was very interesting. We get a great round of football, and then in the last couple of days, as you and I have been back and forth, I swear everything has just exploded with a ton of conversation. So let's get to it because this is a jam-packed episode because not only do we have round 17, but we have to talk, unfortunately, about the firing of Stewie Doo, which is really, really fun. Before we even turned on the mic, we had a nice little conversation about this. I'm interested to have this now recorded on what we think. And then as I told Alex, I have a little bit of a rant because let's just safe to say I am really getting sick and tired of seeing reporters get away with saying something absolutely idiotic. But we'll get there in just a second. So, really quick, Alex, before we jump into the individual games, thoughts of this last round, because a little bit of everything, some results that I was expecting, some results came a little bit shocking. So, your thoughts on round 17's games before we go individually?
Yeah. Oh, look, round 17 was look, very interesting to say the least. As you've said, a couple of results that we expected. But I also think there was a lot of results that defined team seasons. I think the Carlton Freo game, the Richmond Sydney game. I think we've seen that. I'm sorry to say it, Donny, but your Swans aren't going to be finalists this year,
Mm-hmm.
which is a shame because I've enjoyed watching them the last year. You know, their run to the grand final last year was particularly good to watch, but as well, Freo were utterly disappointing. But yeah, we've got, what is it now? We've played 16 games. We've got seven to go. But yeah, no, still anybody's game from 12th onwards.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I said it in my podcast, the last one. I thought this Richmond Sydney game was an eliminator. I thought if somebody loses this game, they're done. There's just a little too much time and little too many points and too much space to try to make up in such a short amount of time. Yes, their seventh game. There's still plenty of games of footy, but they have to get a lot of help above them. And though sometimes it seems like they're getting it, it just didn't manifest itself. So we'll jump right into it. As you said, Thursday night footy, an absolute cracking game with the MCG is Richmond get the win 88-75. I'm going to say this right now. I'm not going to talk about the controversial part right now. I want to save it for my burning questions because I'm interested to hear what you have to say because I've heard something being discussed when it comes to an event that happened in this game that I've been interested to hear some of the opinions. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Your thoughts on this game because really Swans first half absolutely magnificent. Second half Richmond kind of figured it out. The rain came and Richmond got it on their terms. And guys like Dusty, guys like Bolton, guys like Cochin, Ross coming off the bench, were just a little too much for the Swans in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Tale of two halves in this one, really. I think, yeah, Sydney got off to a really good start, and then, yeah, as you said, the Tigers something clicked in that second half, and they just got a run on, and it's been a bit of an issue with Sydney. I feel like they kicked three goals after half time. Like once the clamps get put on, Sydney don't really have a running game. They don't have the players that are capable, and it all stems back to their year to date. It's really been rocked by injuries. There's no continuity within the playing group. Players are coming back in from injury, and it's sort of thrown all the system off balance. And the team's trying to, I think, finally trying to work out what to do without Buddy. And I know he came back and he kicked a few goals, but I think his body still looked quite cooked. I mean, I don't remember a time in the game where he actually went to bend over and pick up a ball. Every time he was run towards the ball, it was literally a soccer or a toe off the deck. Um, but full credit to Richmond. Guys like Shea Bolton, I thought his last quarter was tremendous, really, and he's a front. When he's on like this, he's just so fun to watch. And Dusty had a cracking game as well, and as well guys like Toronto who's having a stellar year, and Hopper. I think he came back for his first game in a while. He was pretty good in the wet as well. So the conditions suited Richmond that half, and I think they got their rewards. And as for Sydney, I think it sums up their season, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Which really kind of it's such a damper, especially for myself again, a Swans fan. But I can put my neutral hat on neutrally again. Richmond, fantastic second half. They clamped out the corridor a lot too, which then Sydney's forced to bomb it deep. Well, then Grimes and Balta and their defensive core and Vlosten started getting intercept marks, which then led to kind of the shotgun out the other side or switches, which then led them to attack to what I thought was a relatively too tall defense for Sydney a little bit. I think they went a little too tall, especially when Francis came in for the sub after the Lloyd injury, and it really kind of exacerbated the issue. Is that Sydney was too tall. So then once the ball got on the ground, they were significantly slower. So it's just everything just kind of went wrong for him. I mean, I don't know. I'm weird like this. I can find a positive light because with Sydney having a couple of academy kids, hey, maybe finishing lower on the ladder gives them some more points, be able to get those kids without having to go into deficit. So I'm weird like that. So got to try to find a positive. So we jump from that to your club, unfortunately falling just a little bit short to the fantastic Pies, 89-77 at Marvel Stadium. I have to admit, sir, I was barracking for the doggies especially when I saw that start, because I thought, oh my gosh, can the doggies find a way to knock off the Pies? Just couldn't hold on enough. The Pies just kept coming.
Yeah, well, as a good side does, Donnie. A fantastic outfit, and I think it's going to be between them and Port towards the end of the year if we're to judge the finals right now. Look, I've had my questions about this team and their consistency since the grand final, but yeah, for 3 quarters we were good. Pressure was up. We were winning winning footy out of the contest, and guys and the forward line has been as fluent and efficient as I've seen in a long, long time. I think one of my biggest criticisms of this team this year has been Norton, Jamara, Cody Waitman, even Rory Lobb when he's been there. Every time the ball goes forward, they all seem to converge into one big pack, and they spoil each other, and it just falls to the right defenders, and they just easily move in, and they easily move it out. And I didn't see a lot of that. Waitman got into Jamara's way a couple of times, but that was that was probably about it. I think Norton was able to find his leading patterns. Jamara's having an insane season, but yeah, that 3rd quarter absolutely killed us. A couple of really, really lazy moments there. No one was really on the goal line when Darcy Moore took that mark. Just sort of those little moments really, really just killed us. And good to see that the boys ran out the game, but you don't win games of footy on 3 quarters. The Pies were sensational. Nick Dacos, where do you have him on your Brownlow tracker at the moment, Donnie?
Oh, he's right there. I like Rosie and Butters kind of I think they're going to take votes away from each other. So I think that's really going to help Nick. And with Neil having a little bit of a down earlier part of the year, it's hard not to see the big day, the young Dacos getting it again. And he's everywhere. He does a little bit of everything, and he's kind of a little utility knife for Fly, because he can go to that half back line and be that jump from the defensive half out. But gone into the midfield, even with DeGoey's when DeGoey was out, he kind of stepped into that role and did something really, really well. Now DeGoey's there, so it makes that midfield that much kind of crazy better, which is kind of scary to think that this team is already good. And Isaac Quaynor had an absolutely fantastic game down back too. I mean, him and
100%.
Cody Waitman had a heavyweight, small heavyweight fight in that game, because
Cruiserweight.
they were going back and forth. It was absolutely a blast to watch, because it was Cody Waitman is on, Quaynor is on. Each contest was different, so, and it kind of gave it. But Quaynor just in the late in the game started getting those intercept marks because the Duggies started kind of bombing it in. So, yeah, I see Nick Dacos winning it. It's kind of interesting that everybody's going to talk about it, but this Pies team, I agree with you. Like, I really only think Port is the only one that's got the firepower to stay with Collingwood if they're on. I'm just interested to see if they lose a Nick Dake, like if a Nick Dacos goes down or a Josh Dacos or a Pendlebury goes down, how does that affect things? Because they kind of feed off him a little bit and the energy of the Magpie Army. So I'm fascinated to see how this Pies teams goes. There, it's hard not to see them holding a premiership, but you don't want to play your best footy right now. You want to play it in finals.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, they've definitely had little lapses where they've been outworked by sides. I think the game against Melbourne on King's birthday is a good example of that.
Mm-hmm.
But like they'll work themselves right into September, and I think they've certainly got a point to prove after last year. I mean, they're very unlucky not to make the finals, but yeah, look, Nick Dacos, you get a deeper appreciation for how he plays when you see him live. His work rate, his skill set, the athleticism he possesses, just and the ability to finish things off. I've said this all week about him. I think if he stays fit and he keeps on this trajectory, he's this generation's answer to Garrett Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Because Gaz had similar traits. He was just an unstoppable force. He could work. He had an insatiable work rate. He had unbelievable talent, great athleticism. He just had everything, and I see lots of Gaz in him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can completely see that. Like I said, he can go anywhere on the ground and still be effective for sure. So we jump from a sensational kind of communication to probably what many people would say the downer of the year as the West Coast Eagles fall to the Brisbane Lions 116-35. I have to say I was thankful Brisbane didn't put up 250 because I was worried going into this game that that was what was going to happen, especially after Sydney did what they did at the SCG. I was worried if Brisbane is on at the GABA, they can put up points and put up points in a quickly. So West Coast kind of stifled that, only giving up 116. But this is just one of those where this is just the easy beat this year, unfortunately, until West Coast kind of the older players get pull their heads in a little bit and kind of start pulling their weight, which some of them unfortunately are not that are on the field. It's just going to be a season where I feel for Adam Simpson because there's not much he can do. He's pulling every lever he can possibly do, and it just isn't working.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I feel sorry for Adam Simpson. The last couple of years he has barely had a full squad of players to choose from. And again, this year, particularly the last couple of months, really, he's had, maybe 25, 26, 27 players to choose from. I think there was only two players that played in their twos team on the weekend. Very lucky not to lose by 100 points in my opinion. I thought 62 inside 50s for 36 scoring shots should have yielded a much better result for the Lions, and that's a side without the likes of Josh Dunkley who didn't play, and Jared Berry didn't play, and Lincoln McCarthy's in their best 22 as well. But in the same token as well, the Eagles didn't have Shuey and Hearn, and both of them were critical components against the Saints last week, and they're not going to be playing again this week. But I think for the Eagles, they'll just they've really got to just continue to work on those green shoots. We all know Oscar Allen's has had a terrific season. We're starting to see guys like Bazo and Campbell Chesser and those guys. Ruben Jinby's had a terrific year, and Elijah Hewitt's is starting to build on some really really good form. These are the sort of players the Eagles fans need to look forward to the next 10 years. And look, I don't know where you stand on the Eagles, Donnie, but I think when it comes this off, they've got to try and offload some of these guys. Jack Darling. See if you can get anything for Liam Duggan or Tom Cole, because I don't know if they're going to be in the next premiership team, or Liam Ryan, guys that are expendable. I'm a bit reluctant to trade guys like Darling and McGovern because they're kids and they take a long time to develop. But if the right price came along for, say, a Jeremy McGovern, if someone offers you a late first round or an early second rounder, not saying it will happen, but if somebody does that, that are looking, Premiership side looks for them, you wouldn't say no to that, would you?
I look at it like this when it comes to it is that I agree. I think that they need to take some of their aging stars and try to flip them for anything that they can. I know that some people would say, well, you got to keep some veterans. Yes, but some of these veterans that they're keeping, they're aged, they have big salaries, and they are not performing right now, or they're injury prone. So you're not going to get very much for them. I know that there's tons. Like I know in the last couple of weeks, Barras has come, his name has hit a lot of lists, including I know Sydney is being connected with him and a couple others. He unfortunately may get your best turnover, and I'm not expecting anything more than a second rounder for him. I just don't see how you're going to get a first out of anybody, because the first round talent that you do have, you're not going to trade. You're not going to trade the Oscar Allens, the Jimbies, the Hewitts, the some of the talented guys that you need are the first round guy that you're going to get a first rounder for. Elliott Yo, Witherden, Duggan, Barras, McGovern, Darling, Liam Ryan. You're going to get seconds, thirds. I just don't see you getting a ton for him. Do you just trade them, get their name off the books, get a young kid in so you can develop? I think you got to take the shot. I think you got to take the shot, because I think right now it's just not working. And I don't blame Simpson for what his list manager keeps screwing up, and that's continuing to think that I think they were 1 year too far. And I think this year it finally burned them. They 1 year too long. I think they should have shipped out some of these aged guys last year, and this year is the list manager. It finally blew up in his face.
I think they should have done it in 2021. We all knew that they were on the
Mm-hmm.
decline that second half of the year, and yeah, look, sometimes, yeah, damned if you damned if you don't. I think, yeah, you could have got much better value out of guys like, McGovern and Hearn and Yo and Shuey, and look, I honest and Nick Nat as well. But yeah, I think out of that veteran list, really, you're probably only going to keep the keys and possibly Shuey and Hearn because they're leaders and they're guys that can set the standard. Um, I think for mine, it all just goes back to the Tim Kelly trade, because they gave away, I think, about three first rounders and gave
Mm-hmm.
them to Geelong to get him. So it's look, again, I think the Eagles saw themselves that still in that window of opportunity, and Tim Kelly wanted to come home, but they paid too much for him. They could have just easily have walked him to the draft because he didn't want to go anywhere else but West Coast, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
unfortunately.
hindsight's a wonderful thing, though.
Well, the crazy thing is that actually that trade, the Tim Kelly trade, was what got Jeremy Cameron to Geelong. So,
Yeah, that's
so
true.
all those first picks are at GWS now. So, so which actually that's a great transition, because that is the next game as we go to as we go up to Giant Stadium, as the Giants get a nice little 13-point win over Hawthorn. And it's great seeing the Giants kind of start to progress a little bit. I mean, starting to win. I think Kingsley is getting that orange tsunami back again. It's the Hawks who, without Sicily, I think have been really, really lackluster. They've been poor. I don't like putting it down to one player, but I've noticed since Sicily's suspension that their defense has been a shambles of itself since he's left the team. But again, Stephen Canelio, Sam Taylor coming back and looking like his all Australian form in the back. Toby Green again continuing to be fantastic going forward. Jesse Hogan has kind of found himself again, shall we say, in the forward line of GWS. Jake Riccardi is playing well. This is a GWS Giants team on its day can be very, very, very difficult to beat. And who knows, maybe even potentially right there when the whips are cracking come finals time.
Yeah, well, they've been an interesting story this year. The Giants. I think a lot of people didn't think too much of them. I don't think I had them going too highly in the preseason predictions, but no, they've been very, very good. Five of the last six games now, I think they've won, the Giants, and it's almost like they found their identity again. They've been a tough nose, sort of hand to the grindstone kind of team. They rely themselves on contested footy, pressure footy, winning the clearances, and you've rattled off a lot of those older guys. Good to see that they could manage to do it without one of their primary getting a good look in there. Josh Kelly only had 6 touches. He was well held by Finn McGuinness. But good to see as well Harry Himmelberg playing back again, and it's sort of unlocked that forward line in a respect. So you've got Jesse Hogan, who's in good form. Jake Riccardi's finally getting his dues. I think remember about 5 years ago, I was watching Riccardi at Werribee in the VFL, and he was in some ripping form. And it's just amazing that nobody picked him up in the mid season draft, because I think a lot of people knew that this kid's got a lot of talent, but who's going to put their hopes on a kid who's only played, you know, 6, 7 games in the VFL up to that point? But no, he's really starting to come along well. It's been a bit of a slow grind, but yeah, no, he's been in since touch. He kicked five, I think it was a few weeks ago against North. Well, but some of the other guys in there as well. It's good to see Kieran Briggs getting a crack. I know he was highly rated in his draft year in 2018. Lockie Ash starting to really come good. Finn Callahan on a wing has been super impressive. Jack Buckley's been another one of these guys. Really, really good story. You know, ACL last year. Before that, he was playing forward, but he's been thrown into the back line now, and he's just almost to a duck to water. He's pretty much pinched Haynes' job.
Hmm. Yeah, you can definitely see Haynes is down a little bit when it comes to his normal production a little bit this year, but it's one of those. I'm not gonna bash the Hawks. I think they're a pesky side. They're in it. It's just that like I said, they just seem rudderless without Sicily. And like I said, Kingsley has done so much with GWS that, like I said, I'm fascinated to watch them over these next few rounds, because do they keep themselves in finals contention? Because even if they drop out, you can't really say this has been a bad season. I think for a first year, Kingsley has done quite well with kind of a very interesting eclectic group that really, like I said, this is the group that got Leon Cameron fired. So so it's very, very interesting to say. So I just, like I said, the Giants are going to be a fun team to watch over these last 7 rounds to see, can they stay in the finals contention and maybe even push potentially to make finals. They're going to be one of the teams that I'm definitely going to keep an eye on. So we jump to it. St. Kilda v. Melbourne, in an ugly game that marred by injury, as St. Kilda lose 3 guys in this game, but Melbourne get the win by 21, 79-58. Thoughts on this, Alex? Because this is a game that I don't really know how to describe this game, because it was, like I said, King goes out early, which kind of made St. Kilda a little more unpredictable, which I think Melbourne took a while to kind of adjust. Stephen May kind of finally figured things out and really had a ripping game in the long run. But this is a Melbourne team that they're just, I'm not going to say Clayton Oliver is missing and has changed his team, but as the weeks go by, it's almost kind of seems that way now.
Yeah, it was a weird game. Nearly put me to sleep on Saturday night. It's no look. It's really hard. The game doesn't sell me on Melbourne a lot. They've definitely had, lots been made about their forward struggles, and it took them Christian Petrarca to really bail them out against the St Kilda side, who've been on the decline in over the last month and a half. Yeah, look, I don't know. I thought St Kilda were brave when they had Max King go down. Seb Ross was injured early as well, and they didn't have Zane Cordy there either. I think it was after half time he got concussed, so they only had 2 on the bench, and they never really went away. Which is excuse me, which is in a degree. I think the Saints. I think a lot of people still sort of disregard the fact that the Saints still have a youngish core of players. We've seen Caminiti in his first year. He's really grasping his opportunity with both hands. Max King still, before he got subbed out, still, building into his frame in a respect. You've got Mitchy Owens, who's now running as the rising star favourite by some miracle, and as well, guys like Steele's had an interrupted season, but Nasiah Wanganeen Malera has been in ripper touch. Callum Wilkie's been in ripper touch. Mason Wood's been one of the bargains of the last few years, playing on a wing, and I think they just need some time to really gel together. I think a lot's been made about Cuddly Ross and how he is showing a more fun-loving side to his playing group, but the results will speak for themselves. They were pretty much in this scenario this time last year. They had a really good first half of the year, and as we got towards the end of the year, they started way, and much is the same. So if the losses keep piling up, people are going to ask the question more.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And this is a Melbourne team that they're hovering in that area where one loss and they're back in the mire of not even being in the top four. So it's very frustrating. They're a very frustrating team because you look at their list and they've got a star right down the spine in every single line. You're like, okay, this team should be really, really good. And then some up and coming talent, some really good veterans. And this year, something's just not clicking, especially forward. And there's something not right with this Melbourne team since the grand final and since kind of the bye week of last year when Sydney when unfortunately when after Fremantle and Sydney beat them in consecutive weeks, something's just not right. I don't know what it is. And it's frustrating because I see this team and you see the names again. It's names on a list. You'd think those names that are there, they should be much more effective than they are. So St. Kilda again, I feel for Ross Lyon in this because he had to kind of make shift what he had. Sad to see King down for the year. I'm hoping, unfortunately, is this a death blow for St. Kilda when it comes to it? Can this potentially knock them out of the finals? It'll be fascinating to see how that goes because I mean you've got some rip roaring teams in Adelaide, GWS, Carlton, and Richmond are starting to find form now. So St. Kilda's going to have to find a way to get wins without King now. Can Caminiti step up again? Can Mitch Owens continue his potential rising star season this year? Which I think, as you said, he's come out of nowhere, especially when you had guys like Ashcroft and Sheasel there. For Mitch Owens to right now be in the conversation is almost astonishing. So this was, I agree with you. I just watched the highlights of this game, and even I was going, man, this would not have been a fun game to watch full because this just doesn't look like a great game, unfortunately. So, and
It was
unfortunately,
very
that's
scrappy.
exactly, which will transition. Unfortunately, the next two games of the rounds are both kind of are similar discussions. Unfortunately, Stewie Doo's last game coaching for the Gold Coast Suns sees a loss by 33 at Port Adelaide, 106-73. Again, Port Adelaide, I mean, they're the talk of the league after Collingwood because 11 wins in a row. Like I said, Hinkley is kind of chuckling every night as he goes to bed after Warren Treadway decides to say his job is unattainable, and now they're second on the ladder and looking like the other team that everybody's talking about potentially as a grand finalist. So I just think Gold Coast ran into a buzzsaw here. The only thing
Yeah.
that I found fascinating about it was the fact that right now, I mean, Port is kind of doing this without a ruck.
Yeah. Well, every time it seems to be a challenge for Port Adelaide, they just seem to just walk all over the top of them. And yeah, I've been on the fan of the Ken Hinkley uprising. Hopefully seeing somebody over coach of Port Adelaide at the start of the year. But fair play to him and fair play to Port. They've just found these ways to win. They're not winning pretty every week, but they're also flexing their muscle as they did in this game. They weren't at their best. Were very very admirable with all things considered. I mean, they've been belted the last 2 weeks, and I think that's what spelt the end of Stewie Dew. But we'll talk more on that later. But the 9 goals in the third term is what is making Port one of the sides to beat this year. And they've got such an insatiable group of players that they have there. We talk about Butters; he wasn't at his best, but he was still very very good. Rosie, unbelievable as well. Willem Drew's one that probably doesn't get enough recognition he deserves. He's a bit of a pest, but he's also very very hard nosed. And not shy of a contest when he's called upon. And as you said, the ruck here, I mean, since Lycett's gone down, we've seen Vicentini have a crack. We've had Finlay have a crack. We've had Sam Hayes come in as well. He hasn't been too bad. Charlie Dixon's getting a go in the ruck, which has probably been one of the weirder move changes over the last couple of years, but it hasn't stunk. I mean, he's actually putting his body in there and he's giving it a crack. So everything just seems to be working at the moment. You know, they've got the defenders now. Alia's in sensational form. Wouldn't mind him in an All Australian blazer at the end of the year. Miles
Mhm.
Bergman's another one, I think, as well. And Dan Houston has been he's the best footy of his bloody life last month.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, and I'll say this: if Lear doesn't, Dan Houston should be one of the halfbacks. Like I think there, if you cannot find a way to get Dan Houston an All Australian Blazer, I think it's travesty because he's had an incredible season. He's kicking goals, not only a game winner, but he kicks goals. He's really effective by foot. Like I said, that's one of the reasons Port is so dangerous is because no matter what line, they've got some great ball movers that I think are absolutely lethal on their day. And they're just, again, at Port Adelaide, at Adelaide Oval, they're absolutely almost impossible to stop at times. So we'll jump down to GMHBA Stadium. And another discussion point that we'll discuss a little bit later on in the podcast as the Cats get a nice 62-point win, 125-63. I mean, I don't like spending a lot of time on blowouts like this. It's kind of like the Brisbane game. Is North a great footy team? I mean, if we're honest, no. Are
No.
are they working their tails off with what they have? Yes. No Wardlord doesn't help because that takes a little bit of it. Luke Davies Uniacke, still a really good game for him. A good game for him. Great to see him back healthy. But this is a Cats team that this is a momentum boost that the rest of the comp's going, oh no, don't give the Cats some momentum. So it, again, Tyson Stingle, Brian Myers, playing well. Um, I just this is a Cats team that even with some of the missing pieces, no Cam Guthrie, who I think is a linchpin in their center. Jack Bowes is coming up well for them. Again, their defense is absolutely stellar. So that again, Cats good win. The Roos are trying. It's unfortunately they're just right now they're several steps behind most of the competition behind most in the competition right now.
Yeah, look, it's they're in an interesting yeah they're in an interesting spot, aren't they, North Melbourne? I mean, obviously, there was a lot of fanfare that was to come with Clarko being in, but I don't think he's only coached for about 5 minutes, and then he's had to distance himself from the football media with the ongoing racism scenario. But I'm pretty sure the word is he's coming back after this week, which is
Mhm.
if you ask me, it's a little bit of a cowardly move. Go and face your old team, Clarko. Um, yeah, look, they've given it a crack. There's no doubt about that. But I think they're still a few years out from really really beating sides and making themselves, move up the ladder. The Cats, I don't want. I'm so sick of seeing this mob win game, just win games of footy. It's a testament. It's a testament to them as a team, and they absolutely have my respect on that. But every time that looks like they're about to plunge down the ladder, they seem to find ways to win and win well. And they've got these players playing at the right time. I'm a big fan of Brad Close in among the forward. Ryan Myers, probably an unpopular opinion, but he should be an All Australian half forward for mine.
Mhm.
Every game I watch Geelong play, he is moving the ball up the ground with regularity. He's delivering it to the forwards so beautifully. He's the league leader in goal assists, and I dare say he'd be averaging a good number of score involvements as well to go along with it. So like he's been very good. But as you said, I think probably his best game of the year. And Tanner Brunn's another one who was brought in at the start of the year, is just slowly getting himself into that category of really really good players. I think he'll probably be another two pre-seasons off really before he makes that jump into an elite status. And also Mitch Duncan, the move to half forward, very very surprising, but very very effective. He had the 30 disposals and a couple of scoring shots as well. They're clicking. I don't like saying it, but they're clicking. Geelong, and once they start to click, it's going to be very very difficult for a lot of sides.
Oh, the Cats. They're the team that they're the team that you despise because they win all the time, but you respect because they do it in a way that's respectable that as much as you can. You respect them because they do play the game. They do play the game and do. play well. So it's a fascinating side. The Cats, if they get in, they're a scary side. That I'll say this. So let's move to it Sunday, and I'm so interested by these last two games because they went the opposite way I was expecting a little bit, which is really interesting because again, the Crows, I mean, Marvel, they find a way to lose, find a way to drop one again on the road. It seems like at home they're great, on the road not so much. So Bombers get a 18-point win, 115-97. Zach Merritt, you bloody superstar, has an absolute blinder of a game in this game. And I think the Bombers really did. I think they've kind of cemented themselves as they're going to be in the finals. The question is, can they break the streak and finally win one in the finals?
Yeah, well, that's going to be the burning question, isn't it? And until we find out on the day, the answer is going to be no, because we've seen Essendon in this sort of form over the last 15 years, and every time they've come up short. But having said that, they're definitely a big chance because I've been so impressed with how Essendon have played from the first round to the last round, to the current round, and probably with the exception of a couple of games, they've been very competitive, very consistent competitively. I think there's a big emphasis on just playing a freewheeling sort of style of football, but they've also got players to help force the turnover and make sure that they don't let the opposition have any easy outs. And we all know, and I know the narrative is a lot on Adelaide about being able to win away from the Adelaide Oval. They've got a 1-6 away record, the Adelaide Oval. So yeah, there's that. But Bombers, you got to give credit where it's due. The guys down there are just absolutely terrific. Zach Merritt has in all Australian form, and I dare say career best form, which is when you consider all of his past seasons, it's definitely a hell of an achievement. Darcy Parish is starting to emerge again from injury, and Andrew McGrath's played one of his best games. Nick Martin in All Australian contention on the wing as well. Ben Hobbs, for mine, Donnie, is probably one of the players to watch because a couple of years ago when we were talking the draft, this kid kept popping up, and I was curious to know where he'd go. I think he was definitely a top 10 prospect, very hard nosed, can hit the scoreboard well, and this game is a testament to it. It was always going to be a challenge behind guys like Caldwell, Merritt, Parish. Jake Stringer's played a little bit in the midfield as well, and there's others in there as well. But the fact he's managed to slot himself into this team, and every week he's done his job, not perfectly, but he's definitely had an impact in games, and it's a big reason why Essendon are where they are.
100%. And again, this is a Crows team that they're almost the tease to me because they have those great games against Collingwood. They you think that okay, the Crows are there, they're going to be a finals team, and then this performance puts some doubt in your minds. So it's very, very interesting to see how both of these sides go because there's tons of confidence in the Essendon. They get a big win, and not so much confidence in the Crow side. But I still say these two teams are very, very similar when it comes to it. That there's still some question marks that I'm interested to see how they go come the end of the season, and then potentially both in the finals. So, and last but not least, I have to admit this. I didn't think this was possible. Fremantle has an underwhelming, absolutely atrocious game at home. Normally, Optus Stadium is their sanctuary. It's the place they want to play. It's just like the West Coast Eagles for the longest time is Optus Stadium, Subiaco Oval, whatever it was when they were playing in Perth was their place. It was so difficult to win there. Carlton goes out there. Fremantle has an atrocious game, falls by 53, 98, 45. Answer me this, Alex. Is this Carlton finding their mojo and potentially putting themselves in finals contention, or was this just in plain and simply Fremantle absolutely crapping the bed at the worst possible time?
I'd like to think it's the latter, but you think back to the last 3 weeks, they've won all three of their games by 50 points or more. Now you can think back to the opposition. You've got the Gold Coast Suns, who, whether or not they've checked out, is entirely anybody's guess. But they're in a bit of trouble at the moment. They were up against the Hawthorn side who aren't doing much, and I think they caught them on an off day. And then they've got Freo, who look, they were garbage, but they're still very, very, I think, in a sense, rated by
Hmm.
a lot of clubs. So, look, I think the Blues are coming. 3 wins in a row, three very, very impressive wins in a row, and all of a sudden, people are starting to disregard the 2 months of genuine crap they dished out before they got on this winning run. I thought the most interesting part of this game was that Freo dominated the hitouts. Obviously, Carlton didn't have De Koning or Pitnet, but um, 70. But Sean Darcy just absolutely destroyed Lewis Young and in the ruck, and I think who else they have in there? I remember the name. They had Silvani in there, and Harry Mackay featured a little bit of them as well. But 58 hitouts, but Carlton had the clearance numbers 41-35 and only -1 in the center clearances. So they understood. This is where I give credit to Carlton. They understood where Sean Darcy would win the taps, and they preempted that, and they made the most of it really, and that's why Freo weren't able to get the game on their terms.
Hmm. Yeah, if you can neutralize Darcy getting the first tap to Brayshawn Sarong in the midfield of Fremantle, you can kind of stable. You can kind of kind of cut the legs off, proverbially, from Fremantle, especially considering their forward line has been less than has had its moments of inexperience and inaccuracy and just plain, I don't know. This is a Fremantle team that I said on its day can be absolutely fantastic and sometimes can be absolutely painful to watch, unfortunately. So that's going to do it for the 9 games of this round. As we kind of said, action packed, so many different storylines coming from it. We get to the burning questions. And finally, sir, I get to ask this question. I've seen this discussion talked about more than I've ever seen it for any injury set situation, and that is, let's go back to Thursday night. And again, I may be a Swans fan, but you're being homers. No, I genuinely want to ask this question. First question, I have to ask this: should there be a sending off rule in footy after the Toby Nankervis Jake Lloyd hit that changed the game for the Swans Tigers games? Because Lloyd goes out, it takes away the running halfback from the Swans, and Nankervis pretty much starts playing much better footy after that. It really does change the game. So, should a sending off rule be added into footy because of this situation?
Yeah, I see the argument for it. I'm not personally a big believer in it because I think it opens itself up to interpretation. The sling tackles is a talking point at the moment, and what happens when we have 3 or 4 sling tackles? We're going to send everyone off for a dangerous tackle, and that leaves the other player concussed. Look, I think that Nankervis got his just desserts. He got his 3 weeks. I'd argue it should have been 4, considering how late it was and how stupid it was. But uh, as much as while I see the argument for, I just don't think I don't think it's a good rule for mine.
I understand it both ways. I understand both sides of the arguments, honestly. Like, I get it because this is such a free flowing game, unlike soccer that has the stoppages and different things like that. Is that, do you really want like a red card situation? Now the guy's gonna walk 120 meters from one pocket to the change rooms. So I 100% understand it. My thing though is I think what they're trying to do is situations where it is obvious that this guy did something that was not in the spirit of the game. And again, spirit of the game is funny talking to an Australian. Sorry. Ash's connection there. I'm sorry. But
It's subject to interpretation. That
exactly. So it's like, it's one of those where it's like I see it both ways. And again, I try to take Red Hat Donnie and throw him out the window in this situation because I mean, many Swans fans are calling for it. 100% understand because Nank was one of the differences in the game. So 100% understand that. I just, it's adjudicating it. And I get it because, and I've said this to many Australians, I said, I love how so many people whinge and sook about the umpiring. I go, well, change the laws then and stop making it so gray. Because if you actually read the laws, a lot of it is self interpretation. One
Oh
umpire
yeah,
can determine something as this, and the next umpire could determine something completely different. But that's his interpretation. So there's so much gray matter in the interpretation that it's like the people that come online, and again it's social media is a toxic pit sometimes. They go, it's a stone cold. No, it's not, because two people after you could say something completely different and have a point and literally end your argument because that's your interpretation. That's not Joe Schmo's three houses down. So I again, I get it both ways. Do I understand it? Do I think it would maybe kind of pull the heads in of some of these guys that do stupid things? Maybe. But I've also heard the argument is that are you going to get the same inconsistencies that you're seeing where what if a superstar does it? What if a guy like I'm spitballing here. What if Bontempelli, which I don't think he would ever do something like this, comes into a contest and cracks somebody with an elbow? I mean, are you going to suspend him? Because everybody wants to see Bontempelli or a Cripps or a Dusty or a Petrarca or an Oliver. I mean, if it's anything like sports over here, they'll get a pass because they're a superstar. People want to see them. So it's like
yeah,
it's opening Pandora's box a little bit. I was just interested because, like I said, I've seen calls both ways. I've seen we can't do it. We can't. The game's already done enough. And then there are people that are like, if you really think about it, it's a good idea because it really kind of tells guys, hey, don't do something stupid or you're going to be done. Besides your suspension, you're probably going to get from it too. Because 4 games, some people would say, well, Nank's fourth game should have been the Swans game. That should have been the first game. He should have been done after that. So again, I understand it both
yeah.
ways. If it changes, I'll understand it. If it doesn't, I understand it. I really am kind of neutral on this. Does it suck? Yes. But I mean, that's also coming a little bit from Swan fan Donnie. So, alrighty,
Yeah.
we'll come to the next question. And Alex, I totally forgot to do this off mic. Is that the next question is Ross's question? He's my producer and former host of the show who is busy enough he can't be on here normally, but he wanted to still be part of the show. So each week he sends me his question of the week and then we answer it. So I'm going to throw it to Ross really quickly to have him ask the question, and then we will answer it. So,
O'Connor, that's a beautifully weighted kick.
What's up, you guys? Glad to be back for another week, and I am bringing you a bit more of a Homer type question, but is what is. I have to be excited because the GWS Giants have won 4 straight games now. They're just 2 points outside the top 8, and even when they lose, it never really looks like they're out of the game. It never really looks like they give up on the game, and this is a team that battles. So I got to ask the question, is there anyone right now that can even come close? Well, I mean, let's not go that far. But is there anyone right now that can top Adam Kingsley for Coach of the Year? Because of the turnaround from this club, it's night and day based on what we saw last season to this season. So, Donnie and friends, is Kingsley the Coach of the Year so far, and is he going to end up that way as well? Also, another fun thing to take a look at that we'll be keeping track of is that the West Coast Eagles are currently sitting at a percentage of 48.2, and of course that is going, as of right now, that is third worst all time. They are just 3 percentage points out of the way for St. Kilda's 1955 team, finishing with a percentage of just 45.39. The Eagles can still do it. I'm kind of hoping they make history here. You guys have a great rest of the show. Have an awesome week. I'll see you next time.
O'Connor, that's a beautifully weighted kick.
thanks, Ross. I love the question. A little leading there, but that's perfectly fine. And thank you for the update on the West Coast Eagles. We'll definitely have to keep an eye on that. So, Alex, I'll repeat the question. Who is your coach of the year and why is it Coach Kingsley from the GWS Giants, aka can Kingsley win this award this year?
Can he win Coach of the Year? Oh, look, it'd be bloody. I mean, bloke in Victoria by the name of Craig McRae's doing okay.
Kenny Hinkley
And so
over in
is
Adelaide.
yeah, Ken Hinkley over in Adelaide is doing a bit of okay as well. Um, no, look, I mean, look, he should be happy with what Adam Kingsley's doing. This time last year, the club was a bit of an all over the place. Before Leon Cameron got sacked, when Mapavey took over as caretaker, there was, it just didn't look like there was an identity with how GWS played. But it looks like, just in the games that I've seen this year from the Giants, they've found that identity again. I think that's just goes a long way into where they'll stand in the long term. I don't, maybe they play finals this year. I don't know if there's any expectation really on where the GWS Giants finish this year, but if they finished in finals, then all the better to them. It certainly spices up the Dogs Giants rivalry. We don't forget here. We don't forget us great followers. But no, look, out of all the incoming coaches, I'd say the only one he really has to compete with is Brad Scott, who is doing sensational things over at Essendon, as we've discussed. But yeah, no, look, he's definitely got admirers, and I might be a bit guilty as a dog supporter saying I'm one of them.
I'm one of those. I look at it as it is like if you take McRae and Hinkley out, then you've got a good shot. Unfortunately, I think Craig McRae, you kind of also look at expectations, and I think Collingwood, there was still a majority of people thought Collingwood were going to be just as good. Port Adelaide, many people thought this is their finals opportunity. Hinkley is not going to stuff up another season, unfortunately. And Kingsley, like I said, expectations GWS was going to be a bottom four side. So if you go by expectations, Kingsley should. I agree with you. I think McRae and Hinkley, it's going to be one of those two, depending on how it goes. I think whoever wins top of the ladder most likely is probably going to have their side as the coach of the year, which again, I love his enthusiasm. I genuinely appreciate it. Probably just a little bit of a homer call on that one, but Ross, we still love you on that one. So we jump to it. Last questions, burning questions. Like I said, I love asking a specific question of people that I know support a certain club. So this is a doggies question for you, Alex. The doggies are still in finals. Is there any worry that they fall out, or do you think they have the mix to stay in finals and then to stay in the finals and to potentially make a run?
Look, I'm always worried when it comes to this team. There's no resting on your laurels. Our draws are pretty favourable at the moment based on current form. I think I'm expecting us to beat Sydney tomorrow night. I think, and as well, Essendon is a winnable game. I think that'll be a winnable game. GWS at Mars Stadium is a winnable game. Richmond at Marvel will be interesting, considering the fact that Dimmer and his non-loving Dockland's head is not there anymore. But as well, games against Hawthorn, West Coast, and then the Cats at the Cattery to close out the year. So even if we win five of those games, I think finals is safe. But yeah, then again, who knows what dog side you're going to see every week? Usually, look, I expect us to beat at least four of them. I'd like to see us beat six. I think based on form this year, it can be done. I think six wins definitely can be done, but they need to be a bit consistent, and it's that consistency which concerns me a lot. I mean, if the forwards are clicking, the mids are running, and yeah, look, it'll be difficult with a backline mate put together with hot glue and sticky tape. But no, look, we expect to get Johannesson back soonish, and Jones probably won't be back till finals. But as long as we've got the runners out of the back line, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Like I said, it's the chasing pack is how do they kind of form out? Albeit, I think the dog, like as you said, I think the run home is favorable. So I think you should make finals, but it'll be interesting. Like I said, it's how that chasing pack does. If they stay there and keep the pressure on the doggies, any faltering potentially will be fascinating. So, all right, Alex, we've done through the burning questions, but as we said, there's a couple of big topics that have happened over the last couple of days that I'd like to discuss. So I'll ask this of you. I'll let you kind of run the show a little bit. Do we want to talk Stewie Deuce firing, or do you want to let me have my rant on the Essendon Geelong saga of where this game should be played?
We'll start with the Geelong Essendon saga, and then we'll work out what Dewey do, because I think that's what everyone wants to hear.
Alrighty, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna pull my soapbox out and I'm gonna put it down underneath. Okay, and Alex has kind of chuckled at me a little bit because I messaged him earlier in the week because I saw in the clip from Footy Classified of Caro, oh lovely Caro, talking about how they should move the game from GMHBA to Essendon to the MCG because we can't let people miss this game. All due respect, Carol, pull your bleeding head in. Okay, I'm going to be nice here. Come on, this is a scheduled home game for GMHBA. Okay, yes, the stadium isn't complete. Who gives a shit? Okay, who gives a shit? The only people that are going to miss out on this are Geelong fans. Why? It's Geelong's home game. Geelong are the ones making money off this game, not Essendon. If you send it to the MCG, more Essendon fans come, it becomes a proverbial road game. Why do media continually think that it's a great idea for this competition to continually make teams have to play at a disadvantage because a team has more fans? Whoop-de-doo, congratulations. Here's my response to you, Kara. Pay attention to US sports. We've got 10 times your population. How many people go to the Super Bowl every year? 70,000, 80,000. Are they the biggest stadiums in the country? No, there are gridiron college football stadiums that have 20 to 30,000 more fans. This is a ridiculous argument. I'm sorry, Australians. I know I'm an American. I'm talking about an Australian sport. Stop giving me this BS excuse that people got to go. Okay. Look at the grand final. How many actual supporters are going to the grand final? 50, maybe? The rest of them are corporate tickets. Stop this innate argument, okay? If Geelong wants to host their games at Geelong and get a little less money because they're not going to get 70, 80,000 people there, they're only going to get 25 or 30, let them do it. That's their club's decision. Obviously, they're not hurting financially because of the way they've been playing the last few years, making it to a grand final and winning a premiership. So obviously, they're not hurting for finances. So I just don't understand this argument. I think it's piss poor. I think it's pathetic. I think Caro again is just showing why many in the interstate clubs are tired of the media because you show your Melbourne or Victorian bias and you're gladly do it. I'm sorry. Pull your head in, Caro. You're just wrong. I understand you may be a great journo. I don't know. I still think you go with some things that I think you don't vet very well, but that's me personally. So, which we'll kind of get into in the next topic. But I'm sorry, Alex. I had to get that off my chest. I don't care what the comment section says. I don't care if Australians get bad. I just don't understand this innately ignorant argument. If Geelong wants to host the game at Geelong, let them. I don't care. It should not be up to Geelong to sacrifice their home game just so another 10 to 15,000 Essendon supporters get to go.
Yeah, no, look, first of all, don't apologize. This is your show, Donnie. So I'm happy to sit back and hear you to spew rhetorical, as long as you see fit. And you make some good points. Look, honestly, one of the bigger points, but one of the biggest reasons why none of the big clubs usually play down at Cardinia Park is because playing at the MCG, it'll bring more revenue to the AFL and vice and all that jazz.
For the finals, I
But
understand that because the finals,
yeah,
the AFL make the money, but during the
yeah,
home and away, it's the clubs that make the money. So it just
yeah. But even still, like the AFL will use the numbers at the MCG as a means to push the narrative that you're getting more fans at the ground. Oh, look, I'm as someone who has to see someone has to see my team play at Geelong nearly every year, I'm sick of it. But I'm also understand that Geelong they've got their home fans. It takes them probably about over an hour to get from Cardinia Park to the MCG. So they don't. So many of them may not choose to go to watch the games at the MCG. They're more than happy to stay at Cardinia Park, regardless on whether or not it's still in development or not.
Mhm.
I think it's great that clubs do come to regardless of whether it's a proud Victorian club like Essendon or Collingwood, or whether or not it's a lesser side like North or St Kilda or even us. It it's good that people at Geelong can get to go to their games and without having to travel so far. It's a big reason why they have such the record they have, because their fans are so supportive and they create this cauldron for the opposition clubs to try and put them off their game.
Yeah, it's just it. I like I said, I understand the financing argument. I completely understand that, but it's like that is Geelong's issue, not the AFL's. Like, again, like I said, the come finals time, I can kind of understand it again, but it is one of those where it's like, okay, Geelong, you finished top of the ladder, but you got to play at the MCG so we can get another 40,000 people to make more money. It's like when you start screaming bankruptcy issues like they did there for a while when it comes to it, but then they're sitting here saying that they need. It's like, I don't know. I just there are a few arguments that they contradict themselves a little bit. It's like don't talk about um fixture integrity. I'm really sick and tired of hearing that being talked about. Wait, what about the fixture? It's like, seriously, your fixture integrity is shot all to hell when Geelong has to host a game at the MCG. I'm sorry, that's you lose all argument there. And I know, again, I'm coming from an outsider's point of view, but I'm sick and tired of hearing fixture integrity. I'm like, as soon as Geelong has to play at the MCG against a Collingwood and Essendon, a MCG homed team, your fixture integrity has lost all your argument personally, but that's just me. So we go to the other topic, which again kind of goes back to Caro again, as Stewie Do unfortunately was sacked earlier yesterday, Australian time. Thoughts on this, Alex? Because I know you and I both had some interesting conversations in our back and forth that I've said this. I said I don't think the Gold Coast understand is that they have all you're doing is setting up whatever coach takes, whether it's Damien Hardwick or whatever. There is no win game in this because all you've done is just set your team back 3 years, if not more.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a kettle of fish, isn't it?
Mhm.
I think back. I feel bad for all the playing group for believing that Stu was the man to take them forward. A lot of them believe him. A lot of them believed in him and his game plan. Ben King committed. He'd been receiving a lot of attention from the Victorian clubs. Jack Lacoste, same at South Australia, and there's a lot of other players as well who I won't name, but they know who they are, and I think it's slapping their faces, a slap in the face to the Gold Coast Sun, to the fans of the Gold Coast Suns who believed that Stewie's job was safe. In a sense, it's crazy, but in a sense, I can understand what is coming out of the direction of the guys in charge. Obviously they want to play finals and they feel like they've got a core list that is, good enough to play finals. But if they wanted to sack Stewie Dew, they should have just, up front and say this is, if and I think that's where I lose a lot of respect for the organization, because they're lying to Stuart Dew, they're lying to their fans, they're lying to the wider AFL community, us believing that he'll be okay. And I don't doubt that I don't doubt that Stewie's a good coach. I just think he was running at a time with a list that is capable of winning games of footy more than they already do. Um, but yeah, no, the whole thing sort of stunk, and it stunk the moment Damien Hardwick said that I wanted to coach again. That was about 4 or 5 weeks after his last game as coach at Richmond, And since then, it's just been an everlasting snowball of, whoever's job it is. A lot of people were trying to push the narrative, and I'm guilty of it too. A lot of it was trying to push the narrative towards Ken Hinkley after season of underwhelming results at Port. That's dead. That's almost dead and buried now. So it's come into somebody else who's not having as much success. That's Stuart Dew, and eventually it got him. And I don't think he'll coach again. I don't think he'd want to coach again. Why would you if you're being treated that harshly? But yeah, no, as I said before, the whole thing just stinks.
I'm gonna go off this too. We kind of discussed this off mic before we got started. Is I'm just tired of the waxing lyrical about Damien Hardwick has 3 premierships. He's gonna go up to the Gold Coast and I understand that the AFL is paying the checks. 100% understand that the AFL is gonna have a little bit more of a lean on the scale than some. But I've said this and I continue to say that Gold Coast does not have a list that fits Damien Hardwick's game style. And I don't know why people don't seem to be talking about this. Like I understand it. It's the narrative. Okay. And like I said, I don't begrudge guys like yourself and the media for going with this because it's topical. People want to talk about it. But the issue that I have is nobody has brought up the fact that if you look at the list and the way the list build is, it does not fit Damien Hardwick at all. It does not. There are no pressure players at the Gold Coast right now. It's not going to work. Will the style work? Yes, because it's dewy up there. Sometimes you get less than favorable footing. So the chaos footy, the constantly just trying to get the ball forward would fit on the Gold Coast. But the players that they have right now are not that type of team. And I just don't understand why nobody is even discussing that. Again, maybe it goes against the narrative, and we can't talk about against the narrative because Damien Hardwick is this great coach, which I'm coaching wise, yes. When he when he got behind the mic there for the last 3 or 4 years, he became a giant sook, and it really annoyed me. Like he whined
Oh yeah,
anytime his team lost, and he got to the point where I said it to somebody. I said he's probably the most detested coach currently when he was still coaching because he would suck every time his team lost. There would always be something he was whinging about, and I'm just like, dude, pull your head in. You opened the can of worms when you said you didn't want to play at Marvel. You did that. This is why you started getting the moniker of the sooking coach. Like plain and simply, I don't want him to go back to that. I mean, I hope he's pulled his head and he's figured out that was just a bad decision and he paid for it. I don't think this is a good fit. I just don't. I think Alistair Clarkson last year was a better fit, but Stewie Dew, they stayed with him. And I don't see this turning out well. There's part of me, and again, I love the Gold Coast players. I think some of them are great. Tuke Miller, absolutely fantastic, incredible player. Matty Rowell, but there's a part of me that I mean, I want this to just blow up in the AFL's face. I know it's masochistic. I'm sorry, but I do. Like, I want it to blow up in their face. Like, I want Damien Hardwick to fail all 3 years, not make finals, because then what are you going to do? Are you going to fire Hardwick? I don't know. Again, call me weird on that one. So I don't want to spend any more time on it. Again, Stewie Dew. I know I've seen tons of Swans fans going, Stewie Dew, coming back to Sydney. So whether
you take Stewie back in a heartbeat, wouldn't you?
Oh, I would. I think he would be fantastic. Considering he only had a winning record over 3 teams, and one of them was Sydney. So, so him leaving the Gold Coast, there's a few Swans fans go, well, maybe we won't have to worry about losing to him anymore. So, but no, like I said, I feel horrible for Stewie because again, he was lied to. Like plain and simply, the board straight up lied to his face. I mean, if what they said in the presser is true, they straight up lied to him last week.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Which I would be absolutely livid if I was Stewie Dew because he came out saying he was fine, that he's been assured, which again, the assured is kind of the kiss of death, which I thought was kind of fascinating. But again,
Yeah, no,
Sorry, sorry,
that's a
Stewie. Sorry, Stewie. I just, like I said, the Gold Coast now, they were still in finals. I think they're done. I don't think a caretaker coach is going to get them to the finals. So unfortunately put a line through Gold Coast now. So Richmond and Carleton are probably licking their chops because that's one team ahead of them that's now probably pretty much buried their season. So we will jump from that to a couple of sections that I like doing, and that's my team of the week, which I kind of put together a team. And I know I did this a little bit with the AFLW with you, Alex. You kind of know what's going on here. And then I do power rankings as well. So I'll quickly go through that since this has been a long episode, but there's been a ton to talk about. So we'll start off on the defensive side and the fullback side. I've kind of started to make sure I get positions, so it'll be fun for this. On the fullbacks, Collingwood's Isaac Quaynor, like I said, an incredible game against Cody Waitman. I can't not give the young man a little bit of a pub. Melbourne's Stephen May and Adelaide's Brody Smith will be the fullbacks. The halfback lines, he's West Coast Jaden Hunt. I know West Coast, but a pretty good game for the young man there. Port Adelaide's Dan Houston and Geelong's Jack Bowes. In the midfield, I have wingers. Unlike the Australian team, I don't just throw.
Thank God!
I don't
Thank
just
goodness
throw
you're one of those.
all the middies.
Thank goodness you're one of those people.
Brisbane's Hugh McCluggage and Essendon's Nick Martin will be the wings. In the center sees Nick Dacos from the Collingwood Magpies, Stephen Canelio from the GWS Giants, and Connor Rosie from the Port Adelaide Power. This one sucks to say, but as a Swans fan, but the Rock is Richmond's Toby Nankervis. Forwards sees at the half forward lineup. Melbourne's Christian Petrarca, GWS's Jesse Hogan, and Port Adelaide's Jeremy Finlayson at the half forward lines. Full forward line, your man, the Flea, Cody Waitman of the Western Bulldogs, Brisbane's Jack Gunston, and Geelong's Tyson Stengel round out the starters. On the bench, as I say, defender, ruckman, midfielder, and forward. Defender, Richmond, Nick Vlaston, again, getting all sorts of things. On some fun, including a viral moment with the umpire, which I had to laugh at that one. Brisbane's Oscar McInerney will be my rock. Midfielder Luke Davies Udiaki of the North Melbourne Roos, and fellow Western Bulldog is the forward Aaron Naughton. Round out the forward and the team of the week. Real quick, I know I kind of threw a lot of names at you. Thoughts on the team that I put together this round?
No, very good team you've put together. I don't think I can find any flaw in there. I mean, very bold to put Nankervis in after he concussed Jake Lloyd, but it's no.
This was a weak round for rucks. A lot of rucks did not do very much. I think there was only two that kicked, and there was only two that kicked goals, and they were both in. And like I've always said, that goals tend to be a little bit of a sweetener when it comes to my team of the week, but there were so many lackluster ruck performances this round altogether that I couldn't, as much as I didn't want to, I couldn't not. So
how close was Timmy English?
Very close. The only issue I think he had was he didn't have a goal. So I think that he was that's why Oscar McInerney got in, because Oscar did have a goal. Like I said, Oscar and Toby were the only two this round that had goals. Timmy English was, if Oscar wouldn't have, Timmy English probably would have been the starter, and I probably would have put Nank down as the bench just for a little bit of spite. But I don't know. That's me personally. So all right, we'll jump from that to the power rankings again. Unfortunately, the fourth and long is no longer existent. So as my homage, I keep my power rankings. But as I say, I go off form, not off of how strong a team is, everything is that. So I'm interested to see how you think of this. At number 5, the Carlton Blues, winning several games in a row, starting to play well. Number 4, the Brisbane Lions, again, a little sketchy, but again, a big win over the West Coast. Number 3, the GWS Giants, again, playing some solid footy there. Number 2, Collingwood, and considering the streak is still alive, number 1, the Port Adelaide Power. So wins in a row in the last 5 games as well are kind of my criteria how I go on that. So thoughts on the power rankings? Anything that you would change?
Oh, look, Carlton, I'd probably would have held off for one more week. I think this game this week's going to be a big indicator of what they are really serious now in terms of being a finals contender. Look, the Cats might have been a sneaky chance for mine. I think they've been lost a game they've only lost one game in the last 5 weeks. So That's not something I would have had a look at, but we can't debate 1 and 2. Port and Collingwood, Brisbane at 3, didn't you? They were very good, and the Giants is a good shout too. They've won 5 of the last 6, so
Mm-hmm.
um,
And 4 of the
Tigers would have
last
been
5. Yep. So
yeah, Tigers would have been a shout touch as well.
yeah, it's the fact that they have that loss in the last 2 games where Carlton's won 3 in a row. GWS has won 4, Brisbane 4, Port Adelaide they have, like I said, like 12 in a row, and then
Yep.
Collingwood is 4 of the last 5. So I kind of go, how many wins in a row in the last 5, and then how out of the last, because I see what you mean, because Geelong has the draw instead of the extra loss, but the draw is kind of a little bit. I mean,
Yeah. Oh, look.
probably should have been a loss. So
Yeah.
I,
No. Yeah. No. Look. In all honesty, yeah, they should have lost that. But then again, watching that game, no one deserved to win that one.
that's exactly what I told a friend of mine. I said I watched that game. I said neither team really deserved to win that game.
So
If we,
it was a rare game. We actually got our wish and nobody won.
yeah, unfortunately, alrighty. So should we get to it? My favorite part of the series. It's just always fun. So we'll go to tipping, and the fun part
Oh
between our
yes.
two clubs. Sydney Cricket Ground sees Sydney versus the Western Bulldogs. I don't think I'm jumping too far to go. You're probably tipping your doggies.
Yeah. Oh look, it's been a year for me tipping my team. There's been weeks where I've quickly opted to tip against my own mob, like last week. And then there are games where once we start getting a run on, it's like, oh, maybe we're a chance. Um, Look, based on the form based on the form these two sides have been in the last few weeks, I'm going to go. But like every other game, I'm not confident about how we'll track. I don't think our record at Sydney's not that good either.
Well, here'll make us smile I've run into the point where I swear I need to reverse tip sometimes, because the last few weeks that I've tipped Sydney thinking they would win, they've either drawn or lost. When I've tipped against them, they've won. So so and
Uh,
actually and here's the thing, if I go by tipping by what I see on the field, I think the doggies are a little bit too strong. I think, like I said, my worry is Hickey out. English, I think, will have fun if the midfield continues to be a point of weakness. And unfortunately, no Chad Warner this week. I just think it's a bad matchup. The Doggies midfield is absolutely incredible, especially when Libet and Bont are on, which unfortunately they may have a field day in this one. So I'm going to tip the Doggies. I still think it's close. I think there's some points if Sydney can get some ball control, that I think they can attack the defense with no Liam Jones, but we'll have to see. Again, I'm interested to see where Sam Darcy playing in this game. Does he go back or does he go forward? That'll be, because if he goes forward, there's no amount of defenders Sydney can put back there that's going to be able to defend all the tall timber that is forward. If he goes back, it'll be interesting to see how he handles either McLean or Logan McDonald or Armadi, depending on who is resting forward. So I tip the doggies, but this is an intriguing matchup tomorrow night, for both teams, in my opinion. Let's go to the MCG. Does the hoodoo continue? Does the Lions fall to the Demons, or can the
oh,
Lions break their hoodoo again against the Demons?
um, look, I'm very reluctant to tip Brisbane because I just do not like them playing at the MCG.
Mhm.
But based on form, they've been the better of the two sides. But probably against all better judgment, I'll back the Demons in because every time I seem to think the D's are on the decline, they always end up doing something and pulling something out of their backside. So no, I'll stick with what I know. Brisbane, you can't tip against Brisbane at the Gabba, but you can certainly tip against from at Melbourne.
I'm with you on this one. I just the wide expanses of the MCG, I think, don't fit Brisbane's style. I think the GABA fits them a lot better. I think the D's defensive pressure, I think May can kind of physically outmatch any of their forwards. So I like the D's in this one, but I still think it's close. I think this is a cracking game. We jump to it, an interesting opener for Saturday as the Collingwood Magpies at the MCG host the Fremantle Dockers. If the Dockers had won this game against Carlton, I'd be much more confident in this game, but an absolutely
Oh, they're going to get
insipid
murdered.
performance. I think this is a horrible matchup in this one. I think Collingwood, unfortunately big.
yeah, Collingwood will just flat out murder them. You watch Nick Dacos just go to town. Really, I think it's going to be a 35 plus disposal performance. He'll kick another couple of goals, another 3 Brownlow votes, and we're riding on board the Nick Dacos Brownlow train, mate. Pies by 10 goals.
Unfortunately. And then we jump up to Heritage Bank Stadium in a game that literally has this has lost all interest personally for me because St. Kilda is so many injuries. Stewie Doo is gone. Do we have to tip this one? I'm gonna tip the Gold Coast because caretaker coach bounce is the only reason. Like I have no opinion on this game because I am not confident in either team. I honestly, by form, we probably should tip St. Kilda because I think St. Kilda has actually got a little bit of form. Gold Coast has just absolutely, I mean, I don't know what to say. So I'm going to tip Gold Coast for the new coach bounce, but I
Yep.
have no confidence in this tip at all.
Yeah, look, it's a few times now I've heard that phrase, the caretaker coach bounce. So that must be real. Yeah, no, look, yeah, I'll back the Suns in this week. Even without the caretaker coach, Suns up at Metricon. I'm not calling it Heritage Bank. I'm calling it Metricon. Um, they always they play their home ground really well, Gold Coast. So I think they'll get a win.
It's an interesting one. Just I looked at that one and went, oh geez, now Stewie D's fired. It's even more of an interesting tip. So all right. Marvel Stadium, the fast stack. I'm interested to see if the roof is closed on this one. Carlton v Port. Who do you like in this one?
Um, Look, I think it's going to be a really really close game.
I do too.
I think the Blues will give them a real run for their money, but Port have won, I think, maybe 10, 11 games in a row
Mhm.
at Docklands. So they really like playing the underneath the roof. So I'll back Port Adelaide in this one, but geez, I wouldn't be shocked if Carlton give them a real run for their money.
I'm with you. Neither team has a really great ruck, so I think it neutralizes that out. And I think honestly, I think there's more consistent danger with Port going forward than there is with Carlton. I mean, I know Carlton's got a couple of wins and some confidence, but I still think Mackay and Kerno, if you can kind of pressure them enough, sometimes they can falter a little bit. So I'm going to tip Port in this one, but I agree with you. I think this is a great game here that could go either way. As we said, the controversial GMHBA Stadium as Geelong host the Essendon Bombers. I'm sorry to Essendon supporters, but the ones that agreed with Caro, I'm gonna tip against you here. I just think Geelong at home, which is where it should be, Cat's just too good.
Yeah, I'm going to tip Geelong as well. They're starting to find their form, the Cats, and I wouldn't be surprised if either Hawkins or Cameron has another field day. Hawkins kicked 8 earlier in the year against Essendon. It was I don't want to see Zerk Thatcher on him again. Otherwise, he's just going to lick his lips, have his best napkin out, and feast.
All right. So this is an intriguing one over at the Adelaide Oval as the Adelaide Crows host GWS. I'm going to tip the Crows. I think this is one of those GWS gets the wrong team at the wrong time. I think the Crows are angry after last week's insipid kind of horrid performance against the Bombers. They're at home, which means they're going to play well. GWS again in consistent form. I just think the speed of the Crows going forward is going to be a little bit too much. I like the Crows. And GWS is competitive through 3 quarters. I think the fourth quarter they get run over though.
Yeah. Oh, look, the Crows have got a lot to ride in this game. Obviously, they played at the start of the year, and the Crows probably should have had them dead to rights if it wasn't for poor accuracy. Look, they play Adelaide Oval better than anyone else at the moment. The Crows, they still have a very exciting group of players, and I think they'll bounce back from it from a difficult week with a big win.
Definitely. And then looking at the Sunday docket. Oh,
Oh,
gee, Christmas. Are you kidding
gee,
me?
gee whiz! Hope,
two
hope, hope,
games,
hope, hope,
two games, and neither of them I'm going. Man, I'm
I
gonna
hope
stay up to watch these games.
I
I'm
hope you
sorry.
plan to I
I'm
hope you plan to sleep through them, mate. Jeez, I've got the fortunate honor of actually going to one of them.
and the worst part about it is that there's a decent time for the first one, and it's probably again my apologies to the Roos and the Hawks fans, but the most decent timed game of the weekend is probably the least quality one between North Melbourne and Hawthorn. And again, I have mates on both sides, and I love you guys to death, but this is just two not very good football teams right now. I'm going to tip Hawthorn in this one. Sicily's back. Sicily brings some structure, ruse. I'm interested to see does Wardlaw come back into this. I think it's a competitive game. It'll be interesting, but it's not going to be the most scintillating football in the world, which sucks to say because I really want both teams to kind of start picking it up a little bit. So Hawks in this one, I think it's competitive, but not exactly fantastic viewing for the viewing public, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm just going to tip. I'm going to fall asleep being at this game. No one wins. No, I'll go Hawthorn in this game. Yeah, look, just for the sole purpose that Hawthorn have actually managed to win a game in the last 3 months and North haven't. So that's that.
All right, last but not least, out the Optus Stadium as the West Coast Eagles face the Richmond Tigers. Is there any worry that Richmond could pull a St. Kilda and West Coast put a little bit of fear into them, or is this one of those, even with no Nankervis, that the Richmond are just too good?
No, they'll be all right. Soldo's it'll be an interesting ruck battle. I think Bailey Williams has been one of the lights at West Coast this year.
I
But having
agree.
said that, I think the Tigers have too much at stake here, and I think they'll do them in quite comfortably. Beat
And
them by nearly 20 goals last time they were at Optus Stadium too. So
I'm interested. Like I said, I think the first 10 minutes are going to be key. If West Coast can get a couple of goals, get the fans into it, which like I said, my hat off to the West Coast Eagles fans. They're still showing up. For as horrible as their season is gone, they are still showing up. If West Coast can get a flyer, 3, 4 goals, then it could get interesting. That could get really, really interesting because sometimes Richmond, they get undisciplined when they get down, which could only help the confidence of a young team that's really hurting. So I'm going to tip Richmond in this one, but I'm intrigued by this game because, like I said, it traveled to Perth, long travel, a West Coast team that you just never know at home. So it'll be fascinating. So all right, Alex, that is going to do it for our episode. A jam-packed, long episode here. I know this has been absolutely insane. I know it's super early here for me. I know it's getting early in the evening for you there, sir. I appreciate you coming on. It's been fantastic to catch up with you. But before we get off, how are things going at the Mongrel Pond, and what are you working on currently besides game notes?
I'll look at nothing too substantial at the moment. I've got to get a crack on with the AFLW content now, because that's not too far away. Yeah, even with all the arguments about the CBA still in the air, but no, look, at the moment, sort of game reviews. I'm actually, I'll be at the North Melbourne Hawthorn game on Sunday. Not reviewing that one. I'm just going to go with my family. But I've got the Collingwood Freo game writing up at that one on Saturday, so should be good. Be interesting. It'll be interesting to just write about Collingwood just massacring 23 purple blokes. But yeah, other than that, it'll just be more of a focus towards the women's football. I think after this game, really.
Well, that's fantastic. Like I said, I cross my fingers they get their CBA because I know, unfortunately, the AFL, reading Marnie Vinyl's article in the Age, they've been playing a little bit dirty pool a little bit with how they're kind of handling it. Unfortunately, it's
Yeah, well, that
kind
doesn't
of,
shock me.
I know, which is really, really frustrating because I think this is the competition that I think there's a huge growth situation here that I think the AFL just they keep continuing to deny is there, that it's there. They just have to let it be there, unfortunately. But we won't go into the AFLW too much on this, but again, I would love to have you on for an AFL round review this year again, because I like giving the ladies just as much pub. But that is going to do it for our episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for giving a listen. Again, more coverage, VFL, Sandful, and Waffle coverage, along with player and supporter interviews still to come as the year goes on. So keep an eye on the channel, and that'll do it for another episode of Donnie's Disposal.
Here's the song.